I know what you're thinking. You're thinking about the canon. We're going to talk about the canon, I promise, but we are going to talk about it for approximately 2 minutes, and then we are going to move on to the music that Johann Pachelbel actually spent his life writing, because it is extraordinary, and it deserves your attention far more than the piece that ends up at every wedding. That is the Toccata in E minor. That is what Pachelbel sounds like when he is not writing wedding music. Welcome back to Pull All the Stops. I'm Jillian Gardner. Let's talk about Pachelbel. All right, the canon. Canon in D major, written sometime in the 1680s for 3 violins and basso continuo. 8 notes in the bass, repeating over and over while 3 violins trade increasingly elaborate variations above it. It was largely forgotten after Pachelbel's death. It was rediscovered in the 20th century. A musicologist found it, it got recorded, it got popular, and then at some point in the 1970s and 1980s, it became the default soundtrack for every wedding, graduation, and inspirational montage in the Western world. It is a perfectly nice piece, it is well constructed, the bass line is elegant, the variations are charming. It is also approximately the 10,000th most interesting thing Pachelbel ever wrote. And we are going to spend the rest of this episode on the other 9,999. Johann Pachelbel was born in 1653 in Nuremberg, Germany, the same city where Albrecht Dürer was born, in the heart of Lutheran Germany, in a culture that took church music very seriously. He was musically gifted from childhood and received excellent training. By his early 20s, he was already working as an organist, first in Vienna, then in Eisenach, then in Erfurt, and it is in Erfurt that the most important professional relationship of his life begins. In Erfurt, Pachelbel became friends with Johann Ambrosius Bach, the father of Johann Sebastian Bach. He became so close to the Bach family that he was the godfather to one of the Bach children and later taught Johann Christoph Bach, Johann Sebastian's older brother. The same older brother you may remember from our Bach episode who confiscated young Sebastian's manuscripts. The Bach family tree and Pachelbel are deeply intertwined, and when you hear Pachelbel's organ music, you start to understand where some of Bach's ideas came from. But Erfurt was also where tragedy struck. In 1683, when Pachelbel was 30 years old, plague came to Erfurt. His first wife, Barbara Gabler, died, their infant son with her. Pachelbel lost his family in the same epidemic within months of his marriage. He remarried the following year, Judith Drömer, who would be his companion for the rest of his life, and with whom he had 7 children. But the first loss, a young wife and a child gone to plague, is part of who Pachelbel was. It is in the music, even if you don't know where it's there. He moved again after Erfurt, to Stuttgart, to Gotha, and finally in 1695 back to his hometown of Nuremberg, where he was appointed organist at St. Sebaldus Church. He stayed there until his death in 1706. He was 52 years old. So what makes Pachelbel's organ music worth your time? 3 things. The first is his chorale preludes. A chorale prelude is a piece for organ based on a Lutheran hymn tune, a chorale. The organist takes the tune and wraps it in counterpoint, elaborates it, meditates on it. It is one of the central forms of Lutheran organ music, and Pachelbel wrote over 90 of them. His chorale preludes are models of clarity. Where Buxtehude was wild and adventurous, remember the Stilus Fantasticus, the unpredictable harmonic turns? Pachelbel was orderly and luminous. His counterpoint is transparent, every voice is audible, every harmonic move makes sense. He took the chorale prelude and turned it into something that could be devotionally meaningful and musically satisfying at the same time. Bach studied these pieces intensely. Bach's own chorale preludes, some of the greatest music ever written for the organ, are inconceivable without Pachelbel's example. The second is his toccatas and fantasias. These are freer pieces, less bound by form, more exploratory. The toccata in E minor we're going to play today is a good example. It moves through dark harmonies, unexpected turns, passages of driving energy, and moments of sudden quiet. It has that quality of the North German organ school, the sense that anything might happen next, combined with Pachelbel's own harmonic precision. It is not as wild as Buxtehude, but it is completely gripping, and it sounds like nothing else in the repertoire. The third is his ciaccones. The ciaccone is a set of variations over a repeating bass line. Pachelbel wrote several, and they are among the most extraordinary pieces in the Baroque organ repertoire. The ciaccone in F minor is particularly deeply expressive, dark, searching, harmonically rich. It is the piece I would play for you if we had another hour. We do not have another hour, but I want you to know it exists. The Toccata in E minor is one of his most atmospheric organ works. It opens with a dramatic gesture, a falling figure in the right hand over a sustained bass that immediately establishes the mood. Dark, searching, a little unsettled. E minor in the Baroque is a key associated with mourning, with contemplation, with a particularly kind of sense of beauty. The piece develops through a series of passages that alternates between driving momentum and sudden stillness. There are moments where the harmony suspends, where you feel like the music is holding its breath before resolving into the next phrase. And there is a section towards the middle where the counterpoint thickens and intensifies before pulling back to something quieter and more spare. It is not a long piece, but it is a complete world. Here's how Pachelbel sounds when nobody is getting married. If that piece opened a door, here is where to go next. The ciaccone in F minor is essential. It is everything the toccata is, but longer and deeper. A set of variations that builds and then ends in a way that feels almost inevitable. It is one of the great pieces of Baroque organ music. The chorale prelude on Nun lobt mein Zal den Herren is a good entry point into his chorale prelude writing, clear, beautiful, immediately accessible even if you don't know the hymn tune. And if you want to follow the thread directly to Bach, find Bach's Passacaglia and Fugue in C minor, BWV 582, which we mentioned in the Buxtehude episode. Hear it after the Pachelbel ciaccone, and the connection becomes unmistakable. Bach didn't invent that form. He inherited it, transformed it, and made it his own. That is what Bach did with everything he touched, and Pachelbel is one of the people he touched it from. 52 years old, Nuremberg. A life of moving, teaching, composing, losing people, keeping going. Over 500 compositions. A canon that everyone knows, and almost nothing else that anyone does. That is changing, one episode at a time. Next Friday on Pull All the Stops, Hymn of the Week, we're looking at Be Thou My Vision, an ancient Irish poem, probably from the 8th century, that was translated into English in 1905 and set to one of the most beautiful folk tunes in all of hymnody. It is a hymn about what you look at and what you keep looking at when everything else falls away. Subscribe so you don't miss it. New videos every Tuesday and Friday. And leave me a comment. Did the toccata in E minor surprise you? Was this the Pachelbel you expected? I want to know what you thought. I'm Jillian Gardner. This is Pull All the Stops. See you Friday.